Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and I'm here to tell you about all the Eve news in these exciting times with World War B going on. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start the show where we usually do, in the show news. Gonna keep it real brief this week. No new blogs this week. No major news from our side. Just a reminder that if you enjoy the show, you should follow us at Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and the blog. And if you want to support the show, the best place to do so is at our Patreon at patreon.com/EveProsper. Our patrons keep the show on the air, pay our bills, and make this show possible to get to you guys ad-free and without any sort of gating, so I have to thank them from the bottom of my heart every week. If you can't support us directly, please link the show to all of your friends and get them in here. So I do have one piece of news before we get into the body of the show, is that the World War B events have foot traffic up almost 2x on the show lately. So we're just about at 2,000 YouTube subscribers, and we've been getting over 50 people watching live on Twitch when we're live on Fridays at 0300. So I should put together a FanFest thing, some sort of giveaway or something. But I really got to thank you guys directly for being fans of the show and tuning in and bearing with me while I've been short on time to edit. So thank you everybody who tunes in every week. It really is, I really do appreciate all of the fans and all of the comments. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into the show. I'm going to skip a lot of the news this week because I have not been plugged into the goings-on of the World War B, and CCP is in full FanFest preparation mode, so things have been a little thin on the news side for speculation. So we're going to go ahead and skip a lot of that news. We're going to talk about some of the other events that have been going on, but we're going to talk about them in relation to things on the market. So we're going to start where we always do, with PLEX, which is down. It has been falling. We're down under the we're down under 1.05, on track to hit 1 billion, which is extremely weak. I had said we should have expected the price to start tracking up again with a target of like 1.2 for FanFest. I was so wrong. We keep seeing weakness, and I think this has to do with a liquidity squeeze across the board. We're seeing much higher trading rates and order rates going on at the moment, thanks to evacs in Imperium space and activity on the frontiers. So it's really interesting to see PLEX prices as weak as they are now. If you want to put on your tinfoil hat, the tinfoil hat I would wear is that I want ISK is the perpetrator of this particular weakness, and as long as they're going to keep fighting and funding the war going on, the price should stay low because they're the ones pumping the excess supply into the market. I have no real recourse to say that, and I would love to be proven wrong, but what I'm seeing in the market right now is a strong supply, a supply outstripping demand, which is unusual for PLEX, and this makes me think that there's just a liquidity squeeze, that there is a demand for ISK that is much higher than usual, that the ISK velocity when CCP Quant releases his numbers next will continue to stay high, much higher than we've seen in recent history, and this, I think, is indicative of that particular change. If we look at the one-year view, this is the part that has me weirded out. So if you cut off the last 30 days of this graph, I would have said the floor is 1.1 billion. We saw it get about that week back around Christmas, back around Black Friday, and after Christmas. And that usually tends to be the bottom of the lull here. And I probably should pull a longer slice of this so you guys can actually see what I've seen. But to fall under that 1.1 billion mark is extremely weak territory. And to stay so low on this RSI chart on the bottom, where we're staying in this extremely weak downward facing pattern, is also uncharacteristic. We don't usually, if we cut from last summer, we were never anywhere near this weak in the RSI chart, and ever since Christmas, we have been dipping up against that bottom line. So this is extremely weak. It is uncharacteristic, to say the least. Again, this one's really hard to work with because usually when I'm predicting PLEX, the safe bet on PLEX is that it will go up. It has traditionally gone up 60% of the time, like 60% of the day over day variation has been positive over the lifetime of PLEX. This particular period of weakness is uncharacteristic, and we haven't seen it anywhere else. Again, I think this is due to liquidity squeeze that people have for the longest time put their wealth in PLEX, and that to get their wealth back out again means that we're seeing a glut of supply. I just don't know where the floor is, because to fall under 1 billion, I think would take some serious effort. Now, the other half, if we turn this spin around, is that despite my incorrectness on skill trading, so to run back the clock, I said a few things about skill trading. One, that I expected injectors to be about 300 million ISK. Two, that I expected ISK per skill point valuation to be under the parity line with a discount rate of maybe 30%. And three, that skill point trading would add a negative feedback loop on PLEX. Those were my three predictions. I got number one right. I have completely failed at number two. But number three, this might be part of that devaluation. Now, I think that's a little bit weird given the positive valuation of injectors at the moment, but this might also be the system actually working as intended, that the PLEX is getting consumed, washed out of the market, or the demand is actually being properly serviced. I wouldn't read it that way. I personally think this is a demand for ISK, and that's really what this boils down to. But I'm very interested to see if CCP Quant has different ideas than me at FanFest. Moving into our zoom in, again, the same trend I've been talking about. We can really see the root of it here in the order volume. In the order volume plot, we've been seeing this steady supply tracking up as the supply available just keeps on trucking up, and this is just on a straight line at the moment with no signs of stopping. Now, I again should have pulled a bigger view to really talk about the absoluteness of the scale with 3,000 on the market right now. The other interesting thing is we can sort of see a weakness in the buy order volume also leading the thing, which is something I would not have expected. I would think, as a speculator, we would put more orders up the lower the price goes, that I would want to have catching orders available at 999 100 million ISK, right? That I would want to be able to catch some of these cheap PLEX in the expectation that at the end of the year I'll sell them and make a whole bunch of money. But with the price just tracking down so uncharacteristically, we might be seeing a flight from investors who are saying, well, man, I don't know where the floor is on this, and so I don't even want to put in cheap orders, because I don't know if we're going to keep falling, if we're going to get to 1 billion and then 990 and then 980 and whatever. So I think the weakness here does speak to some fear factor in investors. And so I don't share that fear, because I think that 1 billion-esque is a pretty decent floor, and if you were in the business of stockpiling, I still think this is a good time to be doing so. But I also may have a longer investment horizon than a lot of you guys. So with that, let's stop talking about PLEX for a bit. Let's move on through the rest of the RMT stuff, because I could basically make the whole show about this. We're already 15 minutes in. If we go ahead and zoom in on RMT tokens, the interesting piece I see this week is that extractors are getting much closer to parity. We've been seeing since the launch that they have been positively valued throughout the existence so far. That they launched and they've just stayed high, not by a whole lot, mind you. But now we're right in the spread where if you bought them in packs of 10, it would be parity with the PLEX yield. This is still positive if you are buying Aurum. So if you're going dollars to Aurum to extractors, you're still ahead because the yield on money Aurum is better than PLEX Aurum. But the margins have basically shrunk to the point of parity at this point, which is interesting. We've seen it get close over the last few weeks, but I think we're finally reaching that parity point, because if it turns out to be too good a deal, people will jump on that instead. And so if PLEX is particularly weak, I would expect savvy investors to liquidate out of PLEX into extractors to get their cash that way. So instead, we're seeing them all at parity with each other. Next, the skill injector price. Now, I might have to go revisit this plot, because as the price of PLEX tracks down, the ISK per skill point tracks up, because that's basically the material cost of the injector is basically all PLEX, right? And the prices just keep tracking up. We're at a stable 800 at the moment, and a very stable demand and supply. It even looks like we may be in for another rise in the next few days with the buy and sell margins, buy and sell demands getting so close lately. So this particular chart, I keep hesitating to include it because I don't know if it's actually showing anything useful. I think it's useful because it tells us what the farming returns are for skill injectors, but maybe I expected the chart to be lower than it is, and I've been wrong since this thing launched, so not sure how much I like being reminded how wrong I am. And then if we go ahead and look at the skill injector market across the board, we're still seeing healthy prices. They're tracking slightly down due to weakness in PLEX, but the markups are pretty decent, especially if you're going across different hubs. We can see that Amar is tracking higher and Dodixie is tracking even higher, which would be a great way to make a couple extra bucks off of your farming tune with the way things have been going. I think that this weakness is basically on track with PLEX costs, but we might see some more movement as the war drones on. There's been a lot of new people coming back to the game who may be keeping the prices higher. But again, I think we're settled into a reasonable normal at the moment, and until things change big time, I think we're going to stay steady at this 650 million target. Moving on to minerals. In minerals, we start with Tritanium, which has been up the last few weeks. I had said that I thought 6.6 was a bit high, but it then quickly turned around and has been falling back down to 6.2. The most interesting part of this is how high the volume traded number has gone. I think that this is again part of the evacuation of nullsec going on at the moment. As entities leave nullsec or have to do fire sales, we're seeing a lot more supply come onto the market, and a complete disregard for the real value of it, because they just want to get out of it, sell their stuff, be done with it. And the Tritanium prices sort of reflect that. Now, for the extra volume traded, we're not seeing a huge uptick in supply. I would have expected about 5 billion more units on the market for the price that it's at. But we are in a positive trend line at the moment, so I expect the price to get back down to 6.2. I don't expect it to fall much below 6.2, but this would be a good place for savvy industrialists to stock up. Moving on to pyrite. Again, we see a similar tanking in price. We were high last week at 11.2, and now we are on track to 10.8 at the moment. This one does not show the same sales margin going on, but as we zoom in, we continue to see a strong supply on the market, again, indicative of fire sailing, where people are just getting rid of it, they don't want it anymore, and they don't care who it goes to. So, like I said, the price just keeps tracking down. I think that our floor at 10.8 is pretty strong. To go much below that, we'd have to see a real uptick in supply, and I don't think that people will liquidate as hard on minerals as they are in other things. Mexilon, again, same story as before. We can really see the uptick in supply going on here. We were at a price of 62 last week, and we're tracking down to 60. I know I keep saying that I think that this is going to be an upshot into Citadel, and every time I think that I'm on track, the market busts. So sorry about that, anybody who's been following my advice on Mexilon. Again, it looks like we were actually seeing a decent shortage last week, but right now we're seeing an uptick in supply, and again, as people liquidate nullsec stocks, especially industrialists, Mexilon is going to be one of the bigger items to come out of nullsec, along with the high-end minerals. That this is a bit of a linchpin in the heavy industry cycle, and we may be seeing more of those stockpiles get liquidated. Isogen, again, is down. I had said a few weeks back that I expected 100 to be the steady state, and right now we're tracking to 95. Thankfully, the volume has settled out, but I think that this might just be indicative of all of the other minerals are weak, and so Isogen is tracking down weak. I think that the price on the candlestick was a little spurious, and we can see better the trend here on the zoom in. I think that the price is slightly undervalued at the moment, but I don't know when the price will go up, so that's the story on Isogen. Nocxium, I had expected to stay steady at 480, but again, we see a much higher tick in sell order volumes than I had originally expected, and again, I think this is due to evacuations, and again, we can see that the quantity on the market has risen a good 50%. We've gone from about 200 million units on the market to 300 million units on the market. This looks like the floor. Looks like we're evening out for supply. So if you wanted Nocxium, here's not a bad place to get on the ride. Again, my disclaimer on mineral speculation is that it does take a deft hand and a strong stomach, so do not go into the speculation with a weak heart. You may take some time to actually make that money back, and if goons are going to do a burn Jita in May, which is a really big if given how much space they've lost, the prices could track down further before they turn around. Zydrine, again, we see the last few days the price had gone from stable to tanking. We're down under 1100 at the moment. Again, my target on this one is still 1K. I think that we're going to get there, I just don't know when. I think that this particular rise in supply is temporary, and the price will recover, but I think we're going to slump. I think we're going to slump a little bit further before it turns around. Megasite is a similar story, but has recovered from its last dip. But again, we still see that supplies are very positive and very strong and still tracking up. So I'd be watching the sell volume to get above 200 million before I buy into Megasite. But again, I expect Megasite to be weak, so I don't really want to tell people to invest in it because I don't know when it's going to come back. And then last, Morphite, again, my particular darling, and unfortunately it's washed out in this view, but we see it staying relatively stable. Volumes are still pretty high. They're higher than I would have expected, given the state of affairs right now. I kind of expected producers to be slurping up more of it and less of it coming from the frontier, because I don't expect there to be giant stockpiles of this stuff. So again, I think this is a good spot if you're a T2 producer to be stocking up, but I don't think this is a good speculator target at the moment. Moving on to fuel markets. Again, we keep seeing the same trends play over, but nitrogen is tracking up again. We had been staying stable at 900, but prices are tracking up again. Now, this might be due to new masters stocking up for their new towers. This might be a bump in supply coming from Goonswarm Nullsec, which sits on a lot of the Nullsec Caldari ice. It could be a stockpiling ahead of Citadel for fuel blocks. I can't tell you which it is. The prices keep tracking up, and it's again a little bit hard for me to tell you where the exact floors and ceilings are for these. Fuel blocks uncharacteristically are staying low, given the uptick in demand. So this actually is a point where I would say it's a good chance to buy Caldari fuel blocks, given the current state of affairs in nitrogen isotopes. Again, if we look at the nitrogen market, we can see that we're crashing out the supply again. Where we were staying steady at 100 million units, we're crashing back down, tending towards 50 million units. The particular weakness here, I think, is going to lead to high prices in the short term. No reason to think we'll be back down at 900 anytime soon. Hopefully, you stocked up when I told you to. I'm pretty sure I told people to. And I think 950 is going to be our steady state into Citadel. And then last is strontium, which has been a bit of a weird one to watch the last few weeks. The price keeps tracking up. We were up at 6K this last couple of weeks as people were grabbing them for capitals and Entosis. The price had tracked up to 8K, but we're back down to 6K. Volumes seem to be steady again at 10 million units, so I expect the price to stay steady at 6K. In the meantime, if you need a strontium in the short term, I think this weekend's the time to stock up. And let's go ahead and move into outlier analysis. Tracking the advanced material markets, we continue to see the same trends we've been seeing for a while. Weakness in photonic metamaterials has abated. They're still staying relatively high, but the trend line, I think, is negative. Crystalline carbonide has settled at 175, but again, we could see some more weakness as the price on Ishtar's tanks. The other place to watch are places like nanotransistors. I'm going to be watching the middle of the market, to be honest. The nanotransistors, your fermionic condensates, your composites. We're going to start seeing some real weirdness in the next few weeks as moon goo prices bubble up. The new masters on the high-end moons have prices going down hard. So let's go ahead and move in so we can take a look at those. Nanotransistors again are tracking up. We're seeing that the supply has become particularly weak. If you are bought into nanotransistors, I would be selling right now because I think this is going to turn around real hard in the next 2 weeks. and we're going to be way below the 2.25K mark real soon here. I think prices are going to hurt in a bad way here coming up soon. The darling of our analysis here is going to be dysprosium. The volumes on the market just keep on trucking, and the prices are going down hard. If we actually zoom in, we can see that the supply has tracked from about 2 million units on the market all the way up to 4 million units, which is rather incredible. So to sort of put this in layman's terms, because I know a lot of you guys may not be bitter vets who understand what dysprosium is. So as a R64, these are randomly seeded throughout the game. The balance of available moons is most concentrated in Imperium-held space. This means that they have decent controls on the dysprosium supply. As the Imperium loses their grasp, we see two things going on. One, that new masters have not been able to build up proper reaction chains yet, which means that instead of consuming the dysprosium locally, they are shipping it out for global consumption, which is unusual. We really expect people to take these high-end materials and turn them into advanced materials locally rather than just ship out raw dysprosium. And then the other half of this is as serfs lose their space, their stockpiles are going to get liquidated, whether that's in fire sales or that they need the cash. This means that a lot more of this supply is coming to market. Now, this graph where we are right now is a little hard to read. We could track up just a touch higher over the weekend, but I really think that these high-end R64 materials are great buy targets in the short term that we're going to track down, looks like, to about 65K on dysprosium. And though the price may stay low for a good month or two, the prices should turn around by the summer, especially if there is still significant fighting going on during the summer. The supplies here, I think, are uncharacteristically high, and this is a great chance to jump on the market. This is a huge buy for me if you are trading this weekend. And neodymium is another R64 that I have been tracking, and again we see the price tanking hard, and again we see the same story where we've basically doubled the supply on the market, and it looks like we're leveling off at about 5.5 million units. So it looks like a decent buy, but the price could be a little unstable into the weekend. I would be playing the buy order side of the market rather than the sell orders to stock up some units on this. I know that my buddy Blake over at K162 Space is going to be really annoyed that I'm telling you guys this particular secret of the market, but I think that this is going to be a decent spot to buy in on, even if it takes maybe 6 to 8 weeks to cash out. Next, and I'm going to be a little bit glad when we can stop tracking this, the P4s. The advice I've been saying for the last few weeks is look for an exit ramp, and you can see on all of the markets why I told you guys to go find an exit ramp, because we're tracking down across the board. Self-harmonizing power cores, for instance, are going down. Wetware mainframes were up a few weeks back, but are again showing weakness, especially in the buy orders. Sterile conduits have been tracking down. Organic mortar applicators are going down. This was why I told you guys to get off-ramps. Now, there is still, I have to give the disclaimer that there might still be a chance that if you cross your fingers and hope really hard that when Citadel's release, that prices track up again as people want to get into the market and are not stockpiled. But I don't think that's going to happen. I could be wrong, and I will wear all of the egg on my face if I am. But I think that the the supply needed for Citadels has been stockpiled, and that the shocking surprise that we were expecting a few months back is no longer a surprise. And even the biggest noob out there has got the message that I need to make sure I have these all stockpiled, and that the day zero demand is not going to be nearly as high as we were all hoping. So sorry about that bad news. I would be get out of the market, try to make as much margin as you can. If you're not out this weekend, I would be waiting until after FanFest in the hopes of a bump, but like I said, you really should have been finding a off-ramp earlier. Next, we go back into my favorite indicator, bombers, and though the prices had tracked up over the 30 million mark, looks like across the board production has met demand, and according to at least the reports I've been seeing, fighting has slowed into the weekend. I kind of expect things to be at a kind of quiet armistice across the war zones during the FanFest week. I expect people to be getting on planes starting Monday and not to be back until the first week of May. And so we may see a slight lull into that period where speculation could drive things a bit weaker than they're supposed to be, and actual fighting demand is not going to be as high because all the FCs are getting drunk in Iceland. I don't think this is going to be directly pronounced so hard that you can be like, and here's where everybody left for FanFest, and here's where everybody came back. But I think that we're going to see a bit of a bow in supply and demand for the next 2 weeks. Again, looking at interceptors, we see a similar pattern. The Raptor has come off of its crazy high point, but is still close to 30 million. And I think this is again due to the popularity of Caldari Tech 2 at the moment. But everything else is getting back into line with its pre-war start points at the moment. Moving on to ships. This week we're looking at the SFIPL, where volumes are very high at the moment. Prices are tracking down. If you were wanting to stock up on SFIPLs, now is a good chance to do it. I would be looking to buy this weekend. Prices might be a little unstable. I'd be watching for buy orders in the 46, 48 million mark. The getting on the actual buy order, on the sell orders at a good price is going to be a little bit tougher. But if you need to stock them up for nullsec supply, or so you can go fill out what are they? Fitted contracts. This is a great chance to stock up on SFIPLs. Another interesting one, and I really should have called this last week, especially with how weak the volume was, is the rattlesnake. Now, Blake and I have been talking about, since he's been tracking the ratting numbers and I've been tracking the prices, that we should do a partner blog series about what we expect the fallout of the Great War to be in unintended effects. And one of them is the supply of high meta items on the high meta Garista items. And you can see really clearly if you go back to the report I did for the 07 show with Blake's graphs in them, which I'll link in like a card on YouTube if I remember, that the prices, that the ratting activity in Garista space had come to nearly a halt. And this should also show up as a huge grinding of a halt of blueprints and ships coming out of those nullsec regions. And we saw a big crash in supply last week, but I didn't show it to you guys because I thought it was just a blip, and I didn't think the price was going to go nuts. And then the price goes up like 30 million-esque. So this is my bad. I owe you guys all, I am a bad financial advisor for this. I should have known better. We're seeing the volumes recover, so I don't think that there might be a chance to buy in right this weekend, but I think the prices are going to track down again before they go up again. And again, with the if we expect an uneasy armistice, the supply could recover for the next couple of weeks, and there might not be speculation to do. So sorry about that. The next one on my speculation target list is the Gila. Again, I expect that, so we're seeing it be extremely popular in PvP at the moment. We're seeing it a lot on Z-Killboard, but we also, this again is a Garista drop, and I had said last week at 200 million this was a good place to get on the market, but I would be holding out for a 220 price personally. The supply is tracking up again, so I think we'll be under 200 million into the weekend, but the prices, if I were bought into this, I would be tracking for 220 million before selling out. Again, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but especially if things get crazy again once Citadel launches, I think the prices are going to track up again. So I would be holding onto my Gila investment if I were in Gilas. Next, again, another one that I missed last week and that I owe you guys, all of the Cokes and Tito's vodka, is that the Megathron, the Imperium changed their fleet metas back to the Megathron. Now, they were using Megathrons way back in the Fountain War, so I don't know how strong a tactical choice the Megathron really is at the moment. I kind of expected something else, to be completely honest. That they went back to their Megathron doctrine is a little bit weird. We're still seeing volumes high and prices tracking down, but this is really weird. I would be really careful if you were getting in on Megathrons because of the price bump, because this again just might be a troll. I don't know what else to say on that. And if we look at the 425mm railguns that go on those new Megathrons, the volumes again are super high, and I would be tempted to jump on this if I were a producer. I would be so tempted, and I would probably make a bad decision because the price could be coming crashing down into this weekend. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this into the weekend, and I'll see if I can get a report tweeted out for you guys before things go too crazy. Another interesting one is the Algos tracked up really bad. Somebody was buying out a ton of these things. They didn't flag any of our other analysis, unfortunately, so this is the only picture I've got. But they seem to be returning back to normal. I don't know who needed 600 Algoses, but the price seems to have restabilized. Another interesting one this week is the Raven. We're seeing demand go up rather slightly, but the price tracking way down. Now, this is way below what we would expect from mineral demand, to be completely This price dip is way lower than I would expect for just minerals, and if you're watching live, this might be a good chance to buy in just a few of them south of the 190 million mark. That's a lot to spend on a Raven. The prices should be back to mineral stability this weekend, but I don't know where all of these Ravens were going, because it's not a super popular ship. I know it's not really a PvP doctrine. The complete sellout here going on. I really should go pull a zoom in so we can actually see what's going on, but I didn't have it ready in time for the show. Another interesting dip, and another good one for all you live viewers to be buying in on, is the Gnosis is down pretty hard. And though this can be sourced through the next store, I believe, and they're not strictly, a collector's item. They are a popular ship, and they do have their uses. So this would be a great chance to be buying in at the, what are they, 56 million at the moment, aiming for a 65 or a 64 million ISK target. So it's not a ton of money, but that's an easy 10% in my opinion. And then last, even though I have been self-flagellating about all of my mispredictions, we're going to go through the other predictions I had just to track some of our long-term investment. First, we're going to start with Quaff Zero, which again I said in last week's show to stock up on, that I expect a target of 8 million ISK, which we are at. So if you'd bought in, now is the time to sell. If you're particularly greedy, we could get to 9, maybe 10 if things all work out. But an off-ramp at 8, I think, is plenty. There was the last time we saw this cycle after the Frostline event, we saw that prices tracked up just a little bit above the parity line. And I think people held too long, and then it came right back down again. So that extra bump was missed. So you might miss a bump up to 9 million if you sell now, but you also might not miss the fall back down to 6 million when people who were waiting for the bump don't sell. So I would be getting out, is the moral of the story. Actually, to be honest, you could probably hold on through the weekend, waiting for the buy line to get a little bit higher, just to track that. Again, the buy order volume is tracking up, and the buy prices should be pushing things up slightly. But the selling out at 8 million is an easy margin. Just get out, man. I definitely do not want to be holding Quaff Zero after Memorial Day, because I expect another event in probably June, and you don't want to be holding Quaff Zero when the next event starts, because this has been a go-to loot item, and you're going to lose your shirt. The Gecko, again, we've been tracking, and the prices keep going down. I expect this trend to get worse once Citadel hits, because once the carrier change hits, I think that the usefulness of the Gecko is going to plummet. Don't know what to tell you for a bottom on this one. I had expected the price to stay stable at 60 million after the Garister event, but I think that we're going to see a lot more of these come to market right after Citadel. So I hope you guys didn't have your nest eggs in geckos, because it's just gonna get worse. You just need to fire sell those bastards. And then my particular favorite, jump freighters. It's been an interesting week. There have been a lot of big jump freighters lost this week, more so than usual, and it's tracking up the price on Reyes for sure. Anshars are tracking up also, but not as sharply. I find it actually really interesting to see Anshars and Reyes on the top 10 kill list that by value for the last 15 days, and actually see a event here in actual buy and sell margins. And last but not least, a quick violence report. And again, I haven't fixed the colors. I'm sorry, I should have done that. I didn't get a chance to fix it today. The interesting ones on the list for me are that the Anshar and the Rhea are on the list. Also that Svipul losses keep tracking up when prices keep tracking down. This would be this is why I think that Svipuls are a good buy this weekend. Again, everything else is staying relatively stable. We see we can see the Rhea line popping out slightly, and the Archons joining the top 10 list this week. And if we look at active regions, we see that Pureblind and Quirius are leading the pack against the bellwethers of Lone Trek and Black Rise and Citadel. It's interesting to see Pureblind particularly being so popular right now for losing stuff, but it's also on track for in terms of value versus Lone Trek, so that's pretty interesting. And then for active systems, we see Ewok-K and MTech-O staying really popular, and Saranin. I don't know who is basing out of there, but that is some particularly hot fighting going on lately. Really beating out our... and Koroman. And that is going to go ahead and wrap up our show. I've been your host, Lockefox, and this has been another Eve Prosper show. If you want to follow the show, all you have to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and the blog. If you want to support us directly, the best place to do so is on our Patreon at patreon.com/Eve Prosper. Our patrons do keep the show on the air and keeps this ad-free and on every week because they hold me hostage. So be a hostage taker. Come support us on Patreon. If you can't support us, please tune in live at 0300 on Fridays, or come tell your friends to come join us. We're very close to 2,000 subs on YouTube, and I would love to get past that mark. Also would love to get closer to 1K on the Twitter if we can get there. I do put extra content out there if you guys want extra graphs during the weeks. When I see things that are worthy of a price alert, I try to get them out that way. And then last, if you want to talk with me, the very best place to do so is on the Tweetfleet Slack server. Information on how to join will be down in the doobly-doo below. We have the Prosper channel there, and you guys can talk with me there. I do try to answer in-game mails, but I am in-game so very rarely these days. The Tweetfleet Slack is the best place to get in touch with me and with a whole bunch of other market speculators like K162 Space and the SEC Lounge channel as well. So come talk with us there. Again, I have been your host, Lockefox. This has been the Eve Prosper Show, and we will be back next week with more market news.